Meeting of the Brentwood Union School District Board of Trustees. I'd like to start our meeting with the flag salute. So everyone please rise.
Flag's over there. I apologize, everyone. Where is it?
Be careful.
Yeah,
Be careful. It's on. It's
Not trip on a
It's
wire.
under
I will
chair.
pull it out here.
Very good.
all right. It's on your chair.
Oh, thanks, Tweet. Save you from a disaster.
Yeah.
All right, hands over hearts, please. And pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, everybody. All right, moving on to item 6, special presentations, correspondence, superintendent, and staff comment. Dana, would you like to start us off?
Well, good evening, everybody, and it's so nice to see so many people, and happy holidays. This is the time of the meeting where I like to share some of the things that have happened since the last time that we met. And so let me get started here. So on November 16th, we're celebrating Friendsgiving. So this is Miss Nowaki and Mrs. Martin's buddy class. So older class, younger class coming together to celebrate. Fun thing out on the run and grass. This is Mr. Bullington's woodshop class out at Adams, where the students had to use popsicle sticks and glue to make bridges. So they had to have a car. It had to be the width of a car that could go across and had to support 20 pounds of weight. So some good design engineering going on there. Also, for All Abilities Week at Adams, we had a student and staff kickball that was taking place at lunch, a really fun thing to watch as part of our sports program. Cray Parent Club did a Nailed It challenge. I think that's a TV show that I have not seen, but it's a cake decorating event. And so you can see lots of turkeys going on there to celebrate that. This is the time of year where we collect for the Brentwood Regional Community Chest. So every one of our schools is collecting food and new toys for about 300 families that are local to us. And so that will culminate this Friday at Brentwood Elementary, where they'll be packing and sorting. And then Saturday, we'll be distributing to families. So much has come in. There's been so much generosity across the district. It's fun to see musicals come back again as we return more to a typical school year. So a classic No Turkey for Perky made its return there at Pioneer. So you can see Perky looking thrilled there under the table as going forward. I want to thank, we have a lot of parents clubs that are doing so many nice things to support and recognize how hard our staff is working. I just wanted to recognize this is the Brentwood Elementary Parents Club for the gratitude that they showed and just the nice treats to celebrate the staff on a Friday and get them off well on Thanksgiving break. 5th graders out at Marsh Creek in Mrs. Ramey's class practicing and taking their final picture for the Walk-Through Revolution and having that experience, learning their historical characters. I love this one. Mrs. Jenkins out at Edna Hill had her very own Thanksgiving Day parade where their students had robots that drove the balloon floats. So a great thing. This is actually a still from a video. So if you go on, you can actually see it going around. It's really great. One of the things that's also back is Kids Against Hunger, which is a program that we've participated with for years. I want to recognize Shannon Morton, who was the teacher that really brought it to Brentwood. She's out right now, but she would be thrilled to know that they packed over 16,000 meals. And the students also have to raise the money for the meals that they pack and send to needy kids over. So they raised over $5,000. And then the Edna Hill, it's a great partnership because the Edna Hill leadership students come out. This is also a still from a video. And if you get a chance to watch it, this is the Great Gobble Off at Guerin Elementary. And these students were the winners of that. So it is something definitely worth watching. For those of you that maybe not many of you that are old enough to remember Johnny Carson having the Piedmont High School bird impersonators. What did they call them? The bird imitators that were on. That was always a highlight. So Yeah. So anyway, so maybe these kids have a future. I want to recognize we had the Turkey Trot, which was a phenomenal success. That's a joint project between the Liberty School District and our school district. So you can see so many people came out Thanksgiving morning. There's Board President Gursky there manning the pancakes, where I think he's been every year since it started 9 years ago. So it's just a really great event. And this is the start of the event. Where all the young kids are. And there were some really fast times out there and a really great event. My understanding is it raised nearly $75,000. So I want to thank all the committee for all the work that they put into such a great event, because that goes right back into our schools and athletic programs. Loma Vista leadership students always out there strong at the Brentwood Holiday Parade. So they were out there representing for that at the Parade of Lights. I really want to acknowledge the Mount Diablo Astronomical Society. They've worked with Cray before. They worked with Harvest Grove to host these astronomy nights, and so kids and families were able to come out and look at stars and planets. So thank you so much to them for partnering with our schools. Fifth graders went out to Big Break. There's lots of great field trips that are available close by, and so students got to experience the ecosystem out there when they left Cray for a little bit. I want to acknowledge Sergeant Brulette from the Brentwood PD and the entire Brentwood Police Department for continuing to part with us around crisis response training. So this is him working with the staff. He's going to be working with each staff this year. And then we'll also be planning a drill as we go forward. So really appreciate their partnership and the continued work towards making our students and our schools as safe as we possibly can. I love this picture of the Brentwood Elementary Winterfest, all the families coming out to night events. It just shows a great family atmosphere and a fun night. This is Allison's art bus. This is Mrs. Bagg's first graders who are out there enjoying this special opportunity. Looks like they're having a great time. And then this is a little bit of science and math out here as Mrs. Penner's class is making sort of a human number line as they're learning positive and negative numbers, and then also connecting it to temperature and elevation. Marsh Creek held their first Embrace Your Culture Week that was sponsored by the Student Council. So I thought they did a great job. And you can see the pictures might be a little bit hard to see there on the right, but so many pictures and then flags on the left that represented all the different cultures that exist out at Marsh Creek School. So wonderful representation. Garen's second graders are starting to fix up Lacey's garden. There's a garden out there that's between the office and the fourth and fifth grade wing, or the fourth grade wing over there. And so they're planting peas and learning about composting. Neat thing for them. I love now that we've switched from recorders to ukuleles. I think it was if something good came out of the pandemic, it was that we got rid of recorders and went to ukuleles. And so anyway, this is Miss Griffith Fraley's, I apologize. I spelled her name wrong there at the end, but Kim's ukulele class doing the dreidel song there on December 5th. And then the Heartfulness Project. This was a neat project where students actually wrote notes that are getting tucked into blankets and donated to homeless in our community. So a way to reach out and connect with others. The annual Posada took place out at Marsh Creek Elementary. And so Wonderful Parents Club has supported that for so many years, and a great opportunity for families to come out together. And then Mrs. Bartling's advisory class out at Adams took an Adopt a Senior program and put together a gift basket filled with items for a senior in our community. So love those kinds of projects that are connecting. If you heard a lot of sirens out by Target this weekend, it was not what normally goes on by Target. It was Adopt a Cop, or Adopt a Shop with a Cop. Sorry, Adopt a Cop would be a different program. This was Shop with a Cop. So students, you can see all the participants that went out, but our Brentwood Police Department collects money from throughout the last couple months, and then takes a student out and helps them shop for their families. And then you can see Mrs. Gonzalez there at Edna Hill in the top right, who what they did then was they bring them back to Edna Hill, and the leadership students help them wrap all the presents so they can give family presents. So it's a really nice program, and I really want to commend them for getting to do that. I had the opportunity to go out on Saturday and see Newsies at Edna Hill. It was a great program. I know Dr. Dow Jensen, your son was in it, and this was Caspi. And so really a great opportunity to see so many kids standing out there. And then a little bit of a Lewis and Clark expedition taking place with Mrs. Terry's students out at Bristow Middle School, enjoying the few moments of sunshine that we had here this week. And then I also want to just thank the city of Brentwood for their ongoing partnership with us. They put on a reduce, reuse, recycle program for our fifth graders as one of their contributions for us as we go forward. This is so the students at Brentwood Elementary are experiencing that. And that is my report for this evening.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much, Dr. Eaton. Any comment from board members at this time?
I went to a transportation committee meeting, and I just wanted to report out real quick. But hopefully in 30 days, we're going to get 2 brand new buses. I think last month we got another bus delivered. So that's positive because most of our buses are getting very, very old as far as that goes. I did find it interesting, though, we have a very low ridership with K through 5th grade in regards to the buses, but then it jumps up considerably for middle school, which I thought was kind of interesting. Really, I couldn't figure out a reason why that is, but it was literally 6 students or so for K through 5, and then it jumped to 100 plus for middle school.
That's interesting.
So I'm not sure. But anyway, if you're interested, they're looking for bus drivers. It is a full-time job with benefits. Or if you're getting ready to retire commercially, contact the transportation office. They'd love to sign you up. And first time, I don't know if anybody here has been to the new transportation office, but it's an impressive, the whole garage and the whole building and everything. It's pretty impressive over there compared to their old one. So thank you.
Very nice. Anybody else? Okay. Moving on to item 7, public comment and oral communication. Do we
Make a motion to open public comment.
have a motion and a second to open public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. I have not received any comment cards. Do we have any?
I'll make a motion that we close public comment.
It's been moved and seconded that we close public comment. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries 5-0. All right, next up would be item 8, our consent items. I believe that we do have some discussion on some of these items, Dr. Eaton.
Yeah, there's a couple things that I want to make clear with the board on the consent calendar. The first one is item 8.5, which is an approval of a contract with School Services of California. And while this is a very exciting thing for at least one person in the room, it is somewhat of a sad thing for us. And so Robin Schmidt has announced his retirement that will take effect at the end of this school year. And so this is a contract with School Services to start searching for his replacement as we go forward. And so I know we'll spend a lot of time celebrating Robin as we get closer to the end. Right now, he's got a lot of work to do. But I do just want to reiterate how extremely fortunate we've been as a school district to have such a talented CBO, but also a caring CBO in the district. And so thank you, Robin, for the work that you put in, and we'll be letting everybody know that as we go forward. The second thing is more exciting for more people, and that is one of the recommendations that you have on your personnel report is tonight is a recommendation to appoint Anna Perales as the next principal of Bristow Middle School. So if that goes well, we have cake and some water. I didn't know if we had punch. We have cake and water behind us that we can have. If it doesn't go well, it'll be awkward with a cake. But one of the things I want to share a little bit about Anna before the vote. I know that the board's had an opportunity to talk to her, and we had many people on her interview. I want to thank especially the first 4 people that are there by the podium. So Lisa and Christy and Courtney Courtney and Denise, who were all part of the first round interview process and are here to see what you're going to do. But Anna she comes to us with the highest recommendations from the Liberty High School district, where she's served as a assistant principal. This is her 4th year at Liberty. Before that, she was a teacher at Heritage High School. She was a social studies teacher. I want to make sure I get her schools right. She graduated with a BA in political science from UC San Diego, a single subject credential in social science from UC Davis, and a master's in administrative credential from St. Mary's College, where everybody should get their master's. So she's also married to a teacher from Heritage High, and I believe she has a daughter who's here from Loma Vista Elementary School. So that's exciting as well. I think when we spoke to people, when we talked to the interview committee, everybody was impressed with how hard a worker she is, her passion for education. People talked about how she went 2 issues. She was constantly in classrooms. It was hard to find her in her office, not because she wasn't there, but because she was constantly out on the school campus engaged in what's happening. And so it's with my highest recommendation that I give that to you tonight and recommend Anna as the next principal for Bristow Middle School.
With that being said, I'd like to make a motion that we approve consent items 8.0 to 8.6.
Before we do that, though, I think we need to pull 8.0 to vote separately, since I was not at the last board meeting and cannot consent to that.
Okay, we can do that.
Call for the correction and then with that correction approve it.
Sure, you could do it either way. So it's up to the board, however you want to do it.
Then I move that we do the correct, the approval of the minutes.
Second.
And we could just pull Stephanie out separately. That's fine.
Okay.
Is there a second on the other ones?
Second.
Okay.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve items 8.0 through 8.6 with an amendment to item 8.0. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Congratulations, Anna.
Congratulations.
And actually, sir, we understand that it's also your birthday today, and this is your surprise birthday party also. Enjoy it.
Yeah. Anna, do you want to introduce who you brought with you?
Sure. Would you like me to take those corners?
It's you can do it from there if you want, or you can do whatever you'd like.
Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much. I can't wait to get started as the Bristow principal. What about Lucy, like and daughter, Ava Brown, my husband Harley, my dad Michael, and my mom. And they are all part of my story and the reason I'm here. So I'm grateful to be here. Thank you so very much. Very
Anna, we're thrilled that you're going to join us. You did an amazing job through the interview process, and we're all very excited to have you come with us very soon. And so we have one more thing to do if the board doesn't want to say anything else, and then we will, and then we can break for cake. Okay?
All right. So we are going to move on to item 9. Hearings and appeals, we have none. Item 10, presentations, reports, and other action items. Report out of closed session. We have nothing to report this evening. And item 10.1, the oath of office.
Okay, so I have a few different things here. First of all, we have a very nice plaque that came in from Clara Laura from Senator Glazer's office, recognizing Steve Gursky, President Steve Gursky, for his year of service. So I want to present that to him.
Hey.
And then we also have certificates for the newly re-elected board members. So, Emil J. Geddes. Steve Gursky, thank you. All right. And so then, let's see. So I get to administer the oath of office. So how about if we have you guys stand over here? Well, not right next to the cake.
How about this angle right here?
Okay.
Here we go again.
Those of you that don't
missed
know,
out
we
on this.
did win by a landslide. Nobody ran
Hundred
against us.
percent of the vote.
Okay, so raise your right hand, please. I state your name.
I, Steve Gursky,
All right. Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance
That I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California.
and the Constitution of the State of California.
And that I take this obligation freely,
And that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion.
or purpose of evasion.
And that I will
And that I will
well and faithfully discharge
well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. President, is it okay if we break for cake?
Absolutely.
Okay. So everybody, we're going to take a break. You're welcome to come up and get some cake. You can introduce yourself to Anna and her family if you'd like. And we're probably going to take about a 10-minute break, and then we're going to get going because we have a lot of things on. So.
Before we get to item 10.2, the first interim report, asked Dr. Eaton if it would be okay if we excused our principals for the evening. If you guys would like to go, please do so. It is the holiday time. I'm sure you've got things to do with family and lots going on. So go ahead. If you guys would like to leave, you're more than welcome to stay, but
And
if
thank
you'd
you
like to
again.
go ahead.
Thank you for all you do, and thank you for voting for us.
Yes, absolutely.
This offer closes in 1 minute.
Have a good night. And if we don't see you, have a great Christmas, everybody, and a nice break. All right, moving on to item 10.2, the approval of the first interim budget. Robin, take it away.
Good evening, board. As you know, several times in the year, we have to officially bring a budget in front of you. That includes budget adoption in June, for unaudited in September, first interim in December, second interim in March. So this is the first interim, sort of really the first true up of the budget from when we actually adopted the budget. So having said all that, just moving through there. And to begin with, what we knew in March is we had a new COLA of a 5.33, and we used that information at the May revise. They updated that to really 6.56, as well as some other items. But the base wasn't added at the May-June time, so we developed a budget with a 6.56 COLA, the TK add-on and the special add-on. Then the state adopted the budget, and I came back to you with a 45-day budget that basically told you that, they added the base, and then they added a little bit more to that in November. And we found out really after they adopted the budget that they did what the dollar amounts were for the Learning Block Grant and the Arts and Music Block Grant, and the updated allocations for ELOP. And so those dollar amounts were not in the original budget, along with some transportation funds. And I'll be talking about all of these a little bit more detail. So past 45 days, which is really after the state adopted the budget, and we knew what we did. And so we, et cetera. So this is really into August, September. The Department of Finance, in looking at the state revenues, added 0.5% onto the COLA. And that's the base, that's the base COLA, so just the base funding. And those details really weren't available until actually they released the LCFF calculator in November. Transportation add-on, actually on the 28th of November, I got the information from the county what our dollar amounts was. And so really, as a reminder, we spend about $1.5 million in transportation costs. Prior to this, the dollar amounts we got from the state for transportation purposes were $158,000, so just under 10%, or just about. So the add-on for transportation is 60% of our 21-22 transportation costs. So the county calculated that and asked us or guided us, advised us to use $785,000 as new revenue for unrestricted. And we'll talk a little bit about that and the effect that had on us as we move forward. So that's revenue changes. On the expenditure side, we've had some salary increases. We know that we recognized 3% in July 1. That was part of the budget development. After the state adopted the budget, we had contingency language that we were able to use, and working through that process, added about a net of 7.16 to the salaries on the budget. So those are expenditures that were not in the budget at the time we adopted in June. And we're still working the final details of the 0.35 for health and welfare that will get finalized here within the week, if not sooner. The other piece, expenditures that'll be added on that we'll actually see at second interim, is the health and welfare, covering those costs for singles and couples. Other increases, which we'll talk about in a little bit, is number one, the cost in special ed increased by $4.5 million. And yes, that's a large number, but we also know that about 1.5 million of that is in salary increases, just by the nature of turning the page and what we did with the 7.16 that we didn't have in the budget at budget time. So moving those dollars and recognizing those salary increases was a natural increase to special ed. And we have about 2.5 recently, just since the budget adopted, additional in contract costs, really relative to the services we have in kids that we're placing out, et cetera. We'll talk about that in a couple of slides. The other item that's increased is we've increased our budget for subs by $800,000. We budgeted a dollar amount that was really appropriate to really 1920, a little bit about 2021, and we're actually seeing the sub illness rate or sub cost rates relative to people being out for something other than school business is really about $100,000 a month to date. So we've increased that budget by $800K, and we'll be watching that. I'll update at second interim. Our utility costs and garbage costs have also gone up, so we're watching those, but that has had an effect on the budget. Moving on to things that affect us, you've seen this is right now you can see the green line is our current enrollment trend this year. The last year is actually the red line. And then the black line is where we were in 1920, and the purple line down there at the bottom is where we were in 2021, when we really saw the big attendance ADA enrollment loss. And so you can see we're clearly above where we were in 1920, which is a conversation we were having last year. Where are we ever going to get there? So you can see we got there and passed. Sort of in summary, we're about 350 kids over where we were at December at this time last year, and we're about 163 kids up from the first day of school. Still growing slowly, but we're still growing, monitoring that. We'll talk about this on the next slide. Our ADA is still down from what it was in 1920. We're still between 93 and 94% instead of 96. The current budget and that the governor adopted and it's built into the LCFF calculator is outside of looking at this year or the prior year ADA. There's still I'll call it a 3-year average, but it's a weighted average looking at the 1920 ADA in that. And so that's helped us. We'll come back to that one. The other piece, just to remind all that when we're funded, the ADA we're funded at is fixed. So if we continue to grow this year, we probably have to grow another 200 kids to even get past the ADA. So we're not going to see any more revenue for ADA gains this year. So any new expenditures we have comes out of the dollar amount we already receive. And that's been sort of our story for the last couple of years. And I'll touch on that just again in a second. We do need to watch legislation to see whether that will extend into the out years, but right now that's affecting this year only. And we need to watch our unduplicated count, as all other districts do, because with free lunches, there's technically not an incentive for families to complete the free reduced lunch application. So we're losing some of those unduplicated counts. If we look at our ADA story in 21-22, which is last year, you can see what our ADA story was, especially for the first 4 months. The first 3 months of this year, we were just under 94.5%, but you can see for the prior month that just got reported just yesterday, we're at 93.71. So and you can see it in the community, you can see it in our families. We know that our ADA, our attendance is just going down, or is not where we want it, because kids are sick. They're out of school right now. And we know we want kids that are able to be home because we don't want them to spread.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, anecdotally, I think if you asked anybody, I know many of you have been going out into schools and seeing it for yourself, right? I'm walking into classes that are missing 12 students, right? And so it's, I think this is going to be an ongoing discussion in the state as we go forward. Ideally, what we should be seeing before COVID hit, we were seeing 96, 97% attendance rates, right? That's what our schools should look like. So you can see sort of how far off it is still as a result going forward. So just wanted to reinforce that.
So when we look at our funding in 21-22, the actual ADA just down at the bottom is 85.20. That was what we actually reported last year. We were funded really on 1920's ADA, which is 89.88. When we built the budget, and I was using the calculator with the information I had at that time, I projected an ADA of about 89.78 based on what I knew and how people will interpret what the governor said, even though we didn't have any actual math to do it with. Our actual ADA right now is just right now, and this is really as of the end of October, was about 88.98. And I think that's going to go down a little bit just because of our attendance rate. But what we're funded at is we're actually funded at 89.39, how the LCFF calculator actually works. So you can see it's a little lower than what we budgeted, and it's technically lower than where we were last year. So when I talk about funding, there's really 3 components to this. We get funded based on ADA. If we just looked at ADA and nothing else, we'd get less revenue this year because we have a lower ADA. But because we have almost over a 10% COLA with a base and an add-on, our revenue actually went up because the COLA add outweighed any loss we had in ADA relative to the reporting here. But it also means that we won't see any new funding because we're not going to gain any new ADA and surpass the 8939 in any way. How that affects us is when we look at the LCFF and we look at what we get per pupil. The first line is the current year, which is 22-23. You can see about what we get per pupil in each of those grade ranges. And I'd like to leave the 9-12 on here because our local district, Liberty, you can see what they get per student in terms of revenue per student, and which is significantly different than us. And you can see in the out years, because they continue to be COLA in the out years, our revenue goes up just on the base. So, if our ADA goes down or up, that's one thing, but the amount we get per kid also grows. So that sort of offsets any loss in ADA we have for a little bit. And down at the bottom, you can see one ADA, which is about 94 students, is about $958,000. So every percent loss in ADA is about $958,000, or any gain by 1% is about that much. And right now, because we're below the state calculator where we are, we won't see a gain or loss until we go above that, or they change the rules. So really looking at assumptions, when we look at assumptions for current year and multi-year, we look at the COLA, we look at our ADA, and we look at the unduplicated count. Those really are the three big things that affect from our end on the LCFF calculator. The COLA is the other one. On the expenditures, we know we have step and column, which is averaging about $900,000 a year. We have that built into the budget over time. STIRS and PERS, we know this year we saw a huge increase in STIRS and a small in PERS, a total of about 1.5. And next year we're seeing an increase in the total of about $135,000 because STIRS does not go up that next year as of right now. The STIRS board can always come out and make that change before next year, so we'll have to watch that. And we also have built in an ongoing increase to special ed of about $700,000 a year built into our multi-year. And just to review STIRS and PERS, we talked about that. You can see the big increase this year is really in the STIRS, and you can see next year we don't see an increase in STIRS, so the big increase really comes from what we have in PERS. Looking at multi-year assumptions, we know the COLA technically is 5.38 next year and then 4.0 the next year, and that's built into the assumptions relative to our revenue. We get an add-on for TK, which built into the budget this year, but you can see it increases slightly over the next couple of years relative to knowing that we get more kids, more TK kids. And then you can see the STIRS and the PERS rates that are built into that. So looking at the unrestricted budget, revenue in June about 89.6, first interim's 95.9, one because the base, the transportation income, and the 0.5 all got added on to that. That was not in the original budget. On the expenditure side, expenditures have also gone up for all the reasons I've talked about above. One, our contribution to special ed, our utilities, our sub rates, and the salary increases are all built into those changes in expenditures. You can see the contribution in special ed went up. Our revenue to expenditures went down for lots of reasons. Number one, just the nature of the cost increase due to salary increases, but our increase in contribution to special ed and our increase in sub cost really pushes us into deficit spending. We still have an adequate balance, so we're still positive in that regard. I will make a note on this slide, and thanks to Melissa Guzman, my coordinator of accounting, who basically saves me on a lot of these things. When we looked at ending balance, it looks like there's a huge difference in the beginning and ending balance between the June budget and first interim. And what the county told us, it's a SACS reporting issue. Well, if you go back to my budget in June and the budget that you adopted in June and the budget we reviewed at unaudited actuals, the beginning balance and ending balance is 7.8 and 7.3. There's some factor in the SACS reporting. So while those values were what we had in anticipated ending balances all the way back in May, it rolls forward for some reason. So what I'm stating is those dollar amounts are correct, and it's not a huge difference in the ending balance. And that's reflected, if you actually look at the SACS documents, it's reflected correctly in the current SACS documents. On the unrestricted side, revenue is up by about 5.6 really because of the COLA and the ADA calculations, transportation revenues. Expenditures up about 6.3. One, the contingency language increase to the budget, as well as our contributions to the restricted. And our services are because of utilities, transportation, and legal costs are up, really because of the transportation utilities. And we're deficit spending now by about $500,000. On the unrestricted side, In the multi-year, you can see that the current year we're deficit spending by about 527. You can see revenues and expenditures do go up over time just because of the natural turning the page and what I've included. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But you can see in 23-24 and 24-25, the revenue to expenditures, that means we're getting more revenue than expenditures at this time with all the assumptions I've already built into the budget. And then you can see the assigned and unassigned balances increases over time. And that's something that, there's lots of things that will occur. This will be, we have the January budget come up that'll affect these numbers, and then second interim and the conversations we still need to have with our employee groups moving forward. Looking at the restricted budget, revenue in June about 21.8, revenue at first interim 38.8. That's like a $10 million increase. Well, remember at the June budget, we didn't know about the block grants. We didn't know about all those funding, so that gets trued up. Contributions increase because of the special ed increase and routine restricted maintenance. Expenditures go up because when we receive those new funds, we have to book them as expenditures, and they'll fall out at the budget at the end of next year and end up in next year, and then they'll be deficit spending next year. That's a broken record, but really when we receive money from the state, especially on the restricted side, we can't put it in an unrestricted account. It has to go into an account and actually be booked as an expenditure, and we monitor that over time. And we'll be monitoring that again at second interim and at June. So you can see the beginning balances and the ending balances are increasing over time. On the restricted, revenue up, expenditures up, really because of what I've talked about, and really the expenditures up really because the special, due to the costs I've talked about in special ed, are before and after school program, and then the one-time funds that came in. If we look quickly at special education, I've talked about this 1.5 million about in salary increases and staffing. Increase in supplies about 250,000, and the contracts and tuition costs up about 2.5 over budget. This led to about 1.2 million increase in the contribution, and that sort of got offset a little bit by our transportation revenue because our transportation costs for special ed are about $900,000. And then there's about 1.7 million of those increases that we've covered with one-time money, which is sort of the plan all the way along as we knew expenses increased like these. So the one point I'll make down there at the bottom is in the multi-year, so in 23-24, I have an expenditure line item in the multi-year on the unrestricted that's increased by 1.5. So if our special ed expenditures don't go down, or we don't see other revenue on behalf of special ed, I can't use one-time money, and I need to bring those expenditures back into the unrestricted, which means it'll be a contribution. So I have that as a placeholder item. So if I go up and I look at the unrestricted, the expenditure increases in 23-24 and 24-25 show that I've already put that expenditure out there like it's going to happen. Well, you need to monitor that. We'll review that at second interim. But I'm saying that out loud because even with that in there, this is sort of looking at the true nature of the budget with everything we know. Looking at and that'll be a reminder that I bring back to you quite often. This is just a quick snapshot. These are the big contract components that we've had to go out and do, basically because we can't find staff to fill these positions. So we have to go out and find contractors. And then we have county placements and NPA placements at the bottom that make up a good portion of that. Another way to look at that, and thanks for Jeff on his input, is, we know that we've contracted for 9 speech and language pathologists, an occupational therapist, 3 psychologists and counselors, a physical therapist, 8 sign language interpreters. And then we know that some of those are new. So of the 8 sign language, 3, we'd be able to hire 3, but that means we still have to contract for 5. And if you look at Jeff, he's going to raise your hand. Sign language interpreters aren't cheap, and neither are speech. None of these are cheap. So something we're looking at both at the table and generically and through the special ed office about what are all the types of things we can do. And then the last list is just all the new people we've already hired this year, just to add on due to the students that we're receiving and the services that they're requiring. So looking at the restricted multi-year, really, this is always interesting, is the revenue this year is 30.8 and it goes down to 23 million next year. That's because we got all the block grants this year. Those are one time. So once we get the revenue, we don't see the revenue again, but we keep it in the budget. So when you look at the out years, when we see the revenue to expenditures, so we're deficit spending in 23, 24, and 24, 25, that's because the dollars we got this year don't show as revenue next year, but they show as expenditures. So we're basically deficit spending on money we got next year that we spend it over several years. It's naturally deficit spending. So it's something we'll watch, but really the important part of that is watching the ending balance on the restricted side. And right now that's healthy. One-time funds, really quickly, we've received about $21.5 million in one-time funds, and I'm talking about COVID one-time funds. So these are monies that we've talked about really starting 2 years ago, and it shows really the general total expenditures by year. So about 7.5 in the first year, 7.7 in the second year, and to date we've spent about 1.4. And so to date, we've spent about $16.7 million just in those one-time dollars we received on behalf of COVID. Now, if we look at that in a different way, and these dollar amounts match, is really we've spent about 6.3 in certificated costs, 800, almost 900,000 in classified, and almost 1.8 just in the employer costs that go along with those STRS, PERS, retirement costs, all those types of things. About 3.2 in materials, and I would argue that that's the HEPA filters, filters and HP, all the types of things that we purchased, some technology relative to the needs we had for COVID at those times. And then we had service contracts, both centrally, special ed, and just service contracts we needed relative to the things we did for distance learning. Now I have a line at the bottom, there's about 3.5 million obligated. What I mean by that is to date, we've spent 1.4. There's probably about another 1.8, 1.9 that we still will spend the rest of this year. That means encumbered. And that leaves us about, and that includes the contributions that were already talked about before. And right now that leaves us about just under $1 million in unaccounted for, but those are those dollar amounts that we've talked about will help us extend our 3-year program in terms of intervention teachers and counselors. So it gives us a little grace, and we don't know what's going to happen in January with COVID on whether we have other things we're going to have to address. So we still have a little cushion to address those things and do the types of things to keep us sane and whole. We do have more one-time money. So these are the new one-time money in addition to all the one-time money they already gave us. So if you look up here, there's all those. And so at this time last year, I was talking about 17 new programs. Well, they've added 4 more. So now we're 21 new categorical programs that the state legislature in their infinite wisdom have provided for us. And there's 5 more that I'm off by a line. There's 4 more that we received just essentially at the end of last year and this year. The expanded learning program, ELOP, about 4.8 million this year. Educator effectiveness, which is that professional development grant we got last year. We spent part of that last year, you can see. And we've already budgeted, we've expended this year, and we still have plans to spend more this year. We have the arts and music instructional material block grant. And again, that's by agreement when we met earlier, is that really covered the one-time, the 2.5% off schedule and the retro payments as part of that plan that we talked about all the way back in August. And then the learning recovery block grant, which will really cover most of the cost of counselors and intervention teachers over the next 2 to 3 years. And so that's a picture of where we are. So you have a reference, and you can always go back to these are the one-time monies that we have. So first interim, we still need to watch and monitor attendance and ADA and our unduplicated count. We need to watch our one-time funding relative to those federal dollars we got and when they expire. And then we need to continue to monitor subs, special education, utilities, health and welfare. All those things will affect us in some way or the other. In January, the governor's going to be in front of us. It's sort of in mid-January with his update. And the sentence I use here, indicators are neutral. Right now, the language is a pretty healthy COLA. I'll explain that at second interim once the governor has his say. But all the other indicators means we're heading towards a recession, and inflation is still affecting us, and cost of living goes up. So we need to watch that very closely in terms of the effect on us. But right now, I'm going to say we're neutral. Not going to be really a whole lot of new money, but we'll have to wait and see what the governor says and what's really funded in June. And any new expenditures and we're really looking for anything as new ongoing funding, not one time. So this first interim budget is presented to you for your consideration and approval. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
That was the fastest 46 slides I think I've ever seen, Robin.
And while you guys are thinking, I just want to big kudos out to Melissa Guzman, our coordinator of accounting. I wouldn't be here with all of the work that she does behind the scenes and her accounting staff to get all this done. So thank you.
Absolutely. Does anybody have any questions for Robin?
Robin, great job. Thank you. And
Thanks.
appreciate it. I'm glad you set the bar for the other slideshows too. That's awesome. With that being said, I'll make a motion that we approve the first interim report.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the first interim report. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Mr. President, could I make a request that we move 10.5 up to be the next item? We have two of our best and brightest counselors with us here tonight, and I'd like to get them back rested if that's okay. And so
Certainly.
if we were able to move the mental health counseling program piece up next, we could do that and then finish
All
off.
right, let's move up to item 10.5 and we'll circle back to 10.3 and 10.4. This is an update on the BUSD mental health and counseling programs. This is an information item for the board.
Well, hello. Thank you, Board, for letting us present this evening. Oh, like I heard something in my ear.
They can't hear us.
Okay, I think we're on. Okay, thank you. All right, and so I'd like to introduce Shannon Biggs is our counselor at Garin, and Catherine Daniels, I almost said Corey Daniels, is our counselor at Edna Hill, and they are amazing, and they've come to help present this evening, so they're the best part of this presentation by far. So you have our first slide shares all of our counselors in Brentwood. We are so fortunate that you have approved of having a social emotional counselor at every site. So we now have 14 counselors. That's our entire counseling team that for the last 2 years, thanks to the wonderful presentation that Robin did, shared the backstory there, that we have a counselor at every site, and then there are 2 counselors at each middle school because we have an academic counselor and then a social emotional counselor. I did it right, Robin. And so this aligns with our goal 4, which is all students will have a safe culture, school culture, climate, and learning environment in order to support student physical, mental, and emotional health. And the strategy there is that increasing our social emotional counselors to support student mental health needs and have a high quality program. So that is something that we feel very strongly that has been developed and improved upon. All right.
All right. And as I'm sure you guys know, a big goal of ours as a counseling program has been to be a comprehensive counseling program. Over the last 2 years, we've really been able to come together and create a solid consistency across the board. And that's been something we've been really proud of. As you all know, we do individual and group counseling for all students, and we focus on students' social, emotional, academic needs. That's just the baseline. Some of you may not know that we do a lot of other things on campus as well as getting involved. We've been implementing and providing teacher and student support for Second Step, the new social emotional curriculum that we've been doing across the district. So every student, every teacher is equipped with the Second Step, and we're going to talk a little more about that in the following slide. Most of our counselors, all of our counselors serve on multiple site committees, but we range from the care team, SST committees, IEP committees, leadership, RTI, behavior RTI, school site council. You name it, you've got a counselor involved in it. And because this funding and this ability to have us there full time, we get to really be part of the school and connecting and serve on those really important leadership roles and being part of those committees. We also run programs like the Healthy Kids Survey, student councils, conflict mediation, interest clubs, community building circles, restorative justice, 504 coordination, all those things. And then the most exciting thing for us as elementary counselors is that we've been presenting the We Thinker series. So every student in all of BUSD, every kindergartner, TK, first grade, and second grade student has all had the exact same curriculum. So we have a common conversation, common language, and we're able to really build from those skills. And it's been pretty impressive. I'd like to give you a little highlight at each individual elementary school. As you know, we've got a bunch of elementary schools, but they're varied in what they do and what our counselors are doing. Yes, we're doing social emotional. Yes, we're doing all these great classroom presentations and curriculum, but we've got things going on like Brentwood Elementary's got a monthly new student lunch bunch. Every new kid that comes gets to come be part of that. A lot of our schools, both Brentwood Elementary and Ron Nunn, are doing these minute meetings where they interview either all the students or all 3rd through 5th grade graders for a minute or two to see how they're feeling, how they're connected, and ways to connect them back to the school and to each other. Pioneer's been working on harmful words on race. Cray's been doing 11 different groups each week. So the counselor there is doing all these different social emotional groups and 11 of them every week, which is pretty impressive numbers. She's also piloting some new programs. And then we've got a great, Ron Nunn's got a great program called the Wellness Wednesday Art from the Heart Club during all lunches, where kids are connecting and being able to express themselves through art and build a lot of social emotional language about art and their emotions. It's been great. Then Mary Casey Black, we've got great lessons going at every language, at every level. Marsh Creek has a wonderful wellness room that they have open for students as well as for staff. Staff can actually book the wellness room and hang out for an after-school hour or so what they need to calm down and have some time. They have a great SOS Buddy program, and they're doing community building circles. Loma Vista, I don't know if you guys know this, but our counselor just came back from maternity leave, and she's already jumping in and seeing tons of kids, and she's starting this Mindful Life Project program where they're connecting those kids and connecting to their lives. And then she's doing Leopard Keepers, which are peer monitors, peer mentor kind of conflict managers. And then at my school, I could go on and on because I love my school and it's a big part of me, but I've been doing a lot of global cultural celebrations. I'm really proud of our Kinder Cougar program, where these 4th and 5th graders volunteer their lunches to spend time helping kindergartners. And our conflict manager program, we've got over 150 kids coming out just to help connect with each other and, pass that along.
And then try that again. At the middle school level, we are lucky enough to have a full-time academic as well as a full-time social emotional counselor. So we really get to support students in both areas a little bit more. So we feel very grateful for that. We, of course, do individual counseling, group counseling, depending on the school site, is either after school or during the school day. We really focus on suicide prevention education as well. In our 8th grade classes, we use the curriculum Signs of Suicide. So all 8th grade students who take health will get this prevention education. And that's something that both academic and social emotional counselors work together on. We help with restorative justice community circles and implementing Second Step into our advisory classes. We've seen that that's usually the most successful place for Second Step at the middle school level. And then we are not only focused on supporting students, but also supporting our staff so that they can support our students. Since we have close to 1,000 students at all of our sites, it's really important that our staff feels that they can support on their own too. So we do that through providing resources and presentations for them to be up to date on whether it be supporting LGBTQ students or suicide prevention education for them on signs to look out for, things like that. And then absolutely supporting parents and guardians. And then specifically for the academic counselors, they focus on master schedule building and high school transitional support.
Okay, and as Katie already mentioned, there's a lot of staff support that goes on throughout just the regular day. There's also classroom observations and consultations, working with teachers to develop specific interventions. Sorry, thank you, Dr. Eaton. Trainings that happen. We have all of our counselors working alongside administrators to do specific trainings at the beginning of every school year, along with being involved, as we mentioned last board meeting, different PDs that they were involved in to support our entire school district. And then Second Step is a support for all staff members as well.
So when it comes to supporting parents or guardians, counselors are there to meet individually with parents. That happens very often. We can attend conferences, but we also attend team meetings a lot as well, whether it be IEPs, 504s, just student support meeting, whatever that child that we're working with or a potential student that we're working with it needs. And then finding and sharing resources is a huge thing for counselors. So whether it be doing a Care Solace referral, which we'll talk about in a moment too, or just finding funding for them. Sometimes we have to get gas carts for transportation to and from school, finding food for them. Sometimes we're working on finding shelter, connecting with other programs in our area for families that are struggling. And then we also offer workshops and presentations. So in the past, we've done what's called Coffee with the Counselors and have done presentations for families during the school day as well as the evening on a variety of different topics so that they know how to best support their child. And counselors are also a huge support for restorative justice practices. So as you all know, that has been a huge push for our district. And so most of our schools have either been trained or are either in the process of being trained to start doing restorative justice circles or RJ circles in the classrooms. And counselors are a huge support in that. We are advocating for these programs and helping with kind of the buy-in for some staff if they're maybe not seeing the benefits of it. But we're also identifying students who are potential RJ leaders so that when the time comes for students to be trained and starting to hold these circles themselves, we can start identifying those that would be a good fit for the program.
And then as Katie was mentioning before, that we have the Care Solace is a mental health, it's a contracted service that we contract with for our district, and it's a mental health coordinated service. So our counselors, our administrators can help support families and students to get in touch with mental health providers. So if we have a student that comes in or a family, and you're trying to connect them with extra supports, and it just does all the work, all those extra pieces for us. So it's been really a wonderful asset for us. It's really hard to see these numbers. I know they're tiny, but this was last year's numbers. We had over 8,000 contacts that happened in our school district alone. And then the chart here just shows the kind of the equal numbers of like the gender, age groups, and ethnicities of the people that are reaching out, which is really phenomenal. And then this year's, we're having very similar. Right now, we're at about 2,400 contacts that we've had so far this year, but it's also similar in that breakdown. So I linked it on your agendas. You can link out and go to the Care Solace and look at that further if you'd like to take some time and look at it, but it's really been a great asset.
Mm-hmm. One of the additional programs that we talked about briefly was Second Step. And as I said before, that's curriculum that we have district-wide. And we have some of the data on it. Basically, every single school site and every teacher has access to this curriculum. And different schools are doing it in different ways. For example, us at Garin, we are going to be going in the spring and teaching lessons in each single class to get people involved. But the fact that it's building more of that common curriculum, the common language about ways kids can stand up for themselves so they can take their own social emotional health and do things about it. It's amazing that it's being rolled out because it is all the way TK, all the way through 8th grade. So once again, it's supporting our kids to help learn what they need to learn, but it's also supporting teachers in a way that's direct and easy. So we're getting that extra support, which is wonderful for counselors as well, because we can come in and provide that second level of support. We know all of our students are being served in a different kind of way. And it's been super, super helpful and a great way to build that.
Mm-hmm. So as a counseling team, we are big on data. We want to show you all what you're spending your money on, why we need all of us. And so as part of that, we wanted to show some of the data from our last time when we had counselors at only 0.5 at each site compared to now. So if you look at this chart, this is our 2019 to 2020 school year. Again, this is when we had counselors as 0.5 at each site. And we document as much as we possibly can, but there are tons of interactions with students and families that we don't even have the opportunity to document. Maybe just the quick conversation in a hallway or a chat in a classroom that doesn't necessarily get put up here. But this is as much as we can document. And you can see there are a total of 10,295 points of contact. So that's for the entire school year. As we know, fourth quarter was a little wonky for us in the 2019-2020. But then if you look at our current school year, which we are only halfway through, not even technically, and with all of us being full-time at each site, we have over 38,000 points of contact at this point. So we really wanted to show you this because we want you to know that your money is being used well and that there is a reason to have us all full-time at sites and what we can do when we do have that extra time and how many more points of contact we can make, whether it be with staff, students, families, and just what we can use with that time.
So that concludes our presentation. Thank you for 4 more years. We feel like a little bit like we ran for office here, but really just wanted to show the high quality, counselors that we have, a great program, and how it's all working together to really meeting our goal of supporting mental health needs. So thank you so much. Are there any questions for us.
I'd just like to say thank you for all of the work you guys are doing. I know the department personally, so it's amazing work that you do, and the documentation of all of the points of contact, and just that you're keeping track of all of that. It's very helpful to see on paper. So thank you.
I said when I read it tonight that this is one of the clearest and most comprehensive reports I've seen, and it really is very clear. And you have the documentation and the descriptions and the contacts and the number of contacts. And I have thoroughly enjoyed it and value what you've done very much. Thank you.
I know we have multiple ESL students, and not necessarily, I'm not really talking about the Spanish speakers. How do you guys handle that as far? I know we have multiple different languages now, and so how's that handled if somebody?
I would say at the middle school level, we just work with our administration to make sure that we have a translator on site. For some of our students, I've even asked elementary counselors who do speak various languages to come up and sit in to help with that. So I know this year I've had a counseling session with a student where an elementary counselor, Miss Vega, was able to come and support and be the translator in between. So I think in the same way we would with any other meeting, see what translation supports we have available. It's obviously not the same for a weekly counseling session if that were the case, but we do the best we can to support all.
And for us at elementary level too, a lot of our stuff is still based on wherever the kids are emotionally, maturity wise. And there's so much in that connection, just that human, us just spending time with them and connecting with them, that language parts might be a little off on occasion, but it doesn't really get in the way of being able to build that strong connecting factor so they know they're being cared about.
Perfect, thanks.
Yeah, I just want to commend you and your team for all that you're doing, all these different programs across the different sites. This is amazing. I probably will be following up offline to learn a little bit more and maybe even, shadow some of the things that are happening. So I'll work with Nicole to see how we can make that happen. One thing that I do see in the data, which I really appreciate being able to look and see it by site, conflict mediation. So it looks like there's quite a difference between, when I'm looking at the middle schools with Adams compared to the other middle schools. Can you talk a little bit more? I'm seeing like 157 for Adams around conflict mediation, but like the other middle schools are well below that threshold. So I'm just curious what's going on.
Yeah, so we actually talked about that today as a team before we came to the meeting. And I can't speak completely for Adams since I'm not at that site, but what we were casually talking about was that at Edna Hill and Bristow, we consider the conflict mediations the ones where we are fully having two students in our office having conversations. There's usually an agreement created, not necessarily something signed, but we come to an agreement, we follow through with it. Whereas at Adams, they're having more conversations out on the yard that they're including as conflict mediations. So disagreements out at lunch or in passing periods where they have to pull two students aside really quickly, they include those conversations as well.
Makes sense.
So how do we kind of have some continuity across our school sites when we're measuring that?
That's something that we're still discussing, especially as we've started breaking things down a bit more too. And so each of our job alike meetings, that's when we spend time figuring out, okay, what are we including in this section? What exactly are we putting here? So as we continue to build that data, that's what we're discussing.
Great, thank you.
And I'd also like to add, a lot of the discrepancy, at least you see in the elementary level, our counselors are not all up and running on the documenting in the same light. Doesn't mean they're not providing the services. They haven't all gotten a hold of our new Aries program in a way that they feel comfortable. So even in the last week, there's been a big shift because they're finally putting numbers in because we only had access starting in late October. So by the spring, we'll have a much more, like a clearer picture of exactly what's going on and how much more being served. Even for myself, I am like 400 behind because it's been a big week and I did a lot of lessons, but they're there and they're building. But that continuity part is the center of what we're trying to do to make sure this is comprehensive.
Thank you. But again, thank you for all that you do.
Yes, and I wanted to say something. Thank you for this very important work. I wanted to just kind of piggyback off of what Scott was saying about ESL students. Historically, mental health issues has been kind of a taboo topic in American culture, but I can also see parents from immigrant cultures coming into the school and not wanting to expose themselves in this vulnerable way. Do you encounter that?
Once a day. So
Yeah, I feel like it happens a lot at the middle school level. I will say it's a lot about building relationships. It's not just a one-time conversation. If a student is struggling and a parent is not comfortable, it's not one time and then I never talk with them again. It's consistently reaching out, offering any type of support. If it's not counseling with me, there is no judgment on that. It's okay, then what else can we do? How else can we support you? Care Solace has been a great resource for that because it's not something that we then ever see again. We technically have the number of whether or not they received treatment or whether or not they started working with somebody, but that's a really great resource for those families that know that maybe they could use some support, but they don't want the school knowing exactly what's going on. So that's been, I would say, our best play for families that aren't comfortable.
And at the elementary level, I'm in the classroom with kindergarten TK. They know me from the get-go. So I'm more of, it's not, here's this counselor, here's a person to come talk to your problems with. I am involved in curriculum, teaching social emotional. I was at our big holiday party last night till 9 p.m. There's a lot of things that they see. So I tend to get more parents approaching me outside of that formal setting, either in a comfortable connect or the questioning, because we're like building that family relationship with them. And like Katie said, I'm there all the time. The kids see me every day at recess. They know I'm there celebrating cultural activities. So there's a lot of ways to connect without it being you're signing up for formal counseling. And because I run so many other different programs, it becomes a level that kids will want to come up and talk just on the yard and parents during drop off. It's much more, we're building a relationship over time, but we're really strive to make that a really comfortable, connected, easy place to access.
Okay, and my next question, I'm not sure if you would have this information, and this is also to any of the cabinet staff. Do we see any correlation between students getting this mental health services with a decrease in having to call law enforcement in?
That's certainly something we could look into, right? We could look into a study. I think one of the challenges in pulling that data is statistically, the number of calls that we make to law enforcement is such a small sample across the district that I'm not sure it would be adequate in terms of having a significant enough sample size to make that the right kind of data. You know what I'm saying? But I think I would say that anecdotally, we would all say yes, that the whole point of this is to be proactive in nature as much as possible. It might be hard for us to pull that data together, but we can talk about it. We can talk about if we don't have that data, is there anything that we can attach to that's more of study-based, right, across a larger sample?
Yeah, I think it would probably have to be over time.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I want to take a second why I have these two ladies here, because Shannon and Catherine are not only two exceptional counselors, they're probably two of our most exceptional employees across the entire district, and they impact so many kids all the time. And we are so lucky to have you. So thank you for all your hard work, and thank you for what you've done for the kids in our district. We appreciate you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing I forgot to mention, I was doing a site visit and I was in the wellness room, and I don't know if someone was in there with the student, but I was in awe because I'm like, this is kind of like what I need. I was able to come in and like feel like I could decompress. It's just very full of wellness. I loved it.
Yeah.
So
It sounds like there's some sort of reservation utility that we could look into. Maybe there'll be an app at some point at Marsh Creek.
Great. Thank you very
guys.
much.
Go home, okay? Not you, Kirsten.
All right, we are going to circle back to item 10.3, the approval of resolution number 2022-21.
Good evening, Board. Good evening, Board. This is basically a yearly document that comes in front of you. And basically we have to yearly post it and report in terms of what we spent on developer fees the prior year. And that's included in the resolution for your approval tonight.
This is an action item.
I have a 25-page PowerPoint if you want, but I figured that we're
This
good
is
with
an
what we
action
have.
item, and I will entertain a motion to approve at this
I'll
time.
make a motion to approve item number where are we? 10.3, the approval of resolution 2022-21.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve item 10.3. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Next up, item 10.4, the approval of portable classroom purchases.
Yeah, we talked about it this the last meeting, and this actually comes back as an action item to give Dana or his designee signature authority to purchase those portables, which we hope to make that decision here in about 6 or 7 days by the time we leave for break.
There's no
Very good.
discussion. I make a motion we approve.
Oh, I just got a real quick question. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I saw where 1 is X amount, 2 is X amount, 3 is half. I mean, we're getting 8. They couldn't do any better than,
Well, when we actually go out to actually do that, we'll get that. And we're sort of looking at the 3-year to get a better deal and then hopefully get a better deal in volume. But they're so competitive out there. We just want to we need to get them here.
okay, thank you. That being said, I'll make a motion that we approve 10.4.
I've already got a motion, so would you like to second?
Oh, I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve item 10.4, the portable classroom purchases. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. All right, skipping ahead to item 10.6, technology update. This is an information
and-
item.
My technology director has figured out the technology in here, so kudos to him. So I just want to take a couple of seconds to introduce for you that you already know him, Robert Rimley, our director of technology, and just how thankful and grateful we are to have him. I'll start with that, but I'm going to turn it over to him.
Very good. Take it away.
And good evening, board. I'm here to present you with a technology update for winter 2022. And as always, we like to introduce our staff. And many of the names you already know: Becky Barnes, Eric Valley, Ernest DeBose, Lisa DeGroof-Wooten, Marite Fernandez, Timatope Alo. He's our brand new systems administrator. He's not brand spanking new, but he's brand new. Been there about 2 months, and he's hit the ground running and just been fantastic. We're very lucky to have him. And of course, myself. And we like to reiterate our commitment to the district and the stakeholders, and that is the technology department is committed to identifying and implementing effective technology solutions to facilitate teaching and learning, administrative tasks, network integrity, and stakeholder communication. So the last time I came before you, we spent a long time on end-user devices. We talked a lot about what we did during distance learning, Chromebook acquisitions and distributions, support models that we put in place. And since then, we've still been maintaining those numbers, and we'll get into that in a second, in addition to staff numbers. But we spent a lot of time the past few months on infrastructure projects and security. So I'll start with the student device update. 2,655 Chromebooks were purchased, I believe, with ECF money last time before I came before you, but they had not arrived yet. Since then, over the summer, we've been able to unpackage, process, and add them to our inventory. We have also, at the end of the school year last year, and I'll go through our model again real quick, just as a refresher. We are TK through 1. It's 2 students per 1 device. And then it is 2 through 5, 1-to-1, but those stay in the classroom. And then there is 6 through 8, and that is take home, 1-to-1. So we, Michael, myself, and some of the site reps at the middle school met at the end of last school year. And we kind of reviewed how things were going, and it was decided that it would be a good idea to put 3 extra devices in each classroom. And this was to mitigate circumstances where devices were forgotten or a battery was not charged or something like that. Then we did the same thing again at the beginning of this school year, and we added 30 devices as a buffer for distribution. And as you'll see as I go through, there's a lot of back and forth with regard to taking devices out to sites, bringing them back, and we'll get to those numbers in a minute. And we deployed 18 student translation tablets. And you probably think, what is a student translation tablet? That is a nice Chrome tablet with a Google Translate app built in. And that's really for our newcomer students who who may be from a multilingual background, and they can translate what the teacher's saying. And the really cool thing about them is that they have a built-in camera, so they can translate documents and so forth. And then we have 1,529 Chromebooks currently in reserves. That number is from about a week ago. Okay, these are the current site numbers. These were added to, they were actually registered to a student. So they don't necessarily include the reserve I spoke about, the 30 in the library plus the 3 in the classrooms in the middles. I'll give you a second to look at those. Okay, so this is the middle school allocations, and this is kind of what I was talking about a minute ago. There's always a cycle. It's constant back and forth from the district to the sites, evaluate, repair, replace if needed. There's a big discrepancy there from the top row distributed out from the returned, and that's part of that is due to the 30 at the libraries plus the 3 in the classrooms, and then the new enrollment on top of that. Okay, staff device allocations. So last time I was here, we had just distributed new laptops to Brentwood, and since then, we've been able to do Pioneer Elementary School over the summer. Lisa and Ernest worked hard to get those out. And we also, we're doing right now Adams Middle School. So those are being provisioned. And once everything's established, then we'll do a distribution probably starting at the end of December, if not January when we come back. In addition to that, our printer and copier provider Ray Morgan Company, who recently changed their name to UBO, they distributed 515 USB printers over the 2-week fall break to teachers throughout the district. And then we added a translation tablet very recently to each reception area in the district. So every lobby area has at least one at each site. For the same reason with the students, it's really to translate, it's to help the enrollment process, et cetera. And that was not my idea. I kind of wish it was, but that was Dana and Kirsten. It was a good idea. Okay, infrastructure. So we spent a long time last time on infrastructure. We talked about how it looks inside the classroom, devices. We didn't spend much time on infrastructure, but time on devices. This time we're going to talk about infrastructure. And I think last time I kind of put a side note in that we would need to focus on that. Since then, we've tackled the projects you see in front of you. The firewall migration was over the summer. The student information system was not entirely us. That was obviously us working side by side with other departments. But nonetheless, it was something that consumed a lot of technology resources. The backup server rebuild, and that was more or less, that consisted of putting in about a 60 terabyte server with upgraded backup capability. And then the data center upgrade, we just wrapped that up, and the multi-factor implementation kickoff. And I'll talk about some of these in a little bit more detail. So the migration and integration to the new firewall. Essentially what we did was we partnered with the Contra Costa County Office of Ed, and we got rid of our old Cisco ASA firewall. And we put in a new, we migrated to a new Palo Alto Networks virtual firewall. Many benefits to this, some including no more hardware upstairs. It needs to be constantly upgraded and updated and can fail on us. So that's nice. In addition to that, the capabilities that are built in, traffic monitoring and traffic analysis. And then also there was some provisioning that was layered in from the county. So that's also very nice. So with our eye on security, that's kind of, we felt good about doing that project, and I think it was a definite plus. Student information system, so we know about this. This was several departments worked side by side with, and we met with the Aries implementation team, I want to say around March, April, and started meeting 2 times a week, 3 to 4 hours per session, with a minimum of 2 technology staff in each meeting. And consumed a lot of time. We were going at their pace, and it really involved importing every single SQL data table from Q to Aries, including data validation in between. And on top of that, it also involved integrating the curricular pieces. And at one point, I think the implementation team at Aries had assumed that we could move everything in with the single sign-on, and it wasn't the case. And the technology team who are involved work incredibly hard to get that put in. And I really appreciate it. Becky, Eric, we work side by side to get those things done. So thank you to them for that. Multi-factor authentication. So in line with our requirements for insurance, we are pretty much mandated to put in multi-factor authentication. So I sent out an email on 11/3 letting staff know that we would start this in phases. And the first phase involved moving in on ClassLink, which hosts a lot of our digital curriculum. So that was the first piece that affected all teachers who use ClassLink. And then we moved to phase 2, which was our remote users who use VPN tunnels. And that was for the Microsoft file access. Phase 3 is in development, and we'll send out plenty of communication before that happens. Data center upgrade. So this was a very large scale project. So we just wrapped this up, and this is something I had talked about last time around. We had just secured the purchase of the servers. As soon as we wrapped up the student information system, we started, Timatope and myself started moving in the virtual servers. And what it basically entailed was moving 55 servers from the old environment to the new environment after hours. So as to not interrupt teaching and learning. It also involved upgrading 22 virtual servers, which were in need of upgrade. And I think we touched every single file server at every single site we have. So that was a bonus and much needed. We also increased our storage space from 33 terabytes to 60 terabytes. So a lot of benefits associated with that, including failover and archiving, et cetera. And we reduced I guess you'd say we reduced our size, our physical footprint by quite a bit, and I'll show you in a minute. And of course, that's going to lead to less power consumption. So, and enhanced performance due to the fact that these are hyperconverged units, so everything's in one chassis. Here's the servers that were virtual editions were upgraded. So every single site is listed there. And usually the middles have 2. One elementary has 2, and I think that's due to their TK program. And then, of course, we have 1 here and 6 utility servers that we upgraded. And this is a picture, and I know probably not overly interesting to everybody, but it's not a good-looking picture. But on the left is it's our new stack. So that's our 4 nodes. And that's what we put into our server rack on the right. And what I did was the green is going to replace everything in the red. So you can see the size difference and the efficiency. Okay. Projects in progress and upcoming. So network switch replacement. So with our E-rate funds, which is a 50-50, they match district funds. We were able to secure 40 network switches, which will replace our old Cisco 2950 model. We are rolling those out now. We received them about a week and a half ago. We are also going to be focused heavily on completing the remaining phases of multi-factor authentication. So that phase 3 is in development now. In addition, next year, I want to say around August is when our wireless network controllers are going to come towards the end of support. We'll be focused on that. And it's not the APs. These are fine for another 3 or 4 years. It's the things that talk to those and provision them. Ongoing cybersecurity planning and review. So we're meeting weekly now about this. I have a small team, and our plan is to branch out and talk to folks from other departments and get them involved, and kind of build our policies, internal and external, at least build upon them, review them, and we're looking forward to continuing that. And then disaster recovery, where we implement our rubric backup appliance. That's coming up as well. So plenty of projects going forward on the books. Any questions?
Overwhelmed.
I just want to thank Robert while you guys are thinking of questions. You know, this looks like a lot of stuff, and it is a lot of stuff, and it's often the stuff we don't hear about. It's all the stuff that happens behind the scenes we never know about. But it basically supports the teachers and the kids out in the classroom to get all those things done and get access to all their online learning. The one comment I'll make on the cybersecurity and multi-factor authentication, it's actually a requirement of our insurance requirement for insuring and being insured for cybersecurity, of having these steps in place, or we end up not being covered in an emergency, or our costs will be through the roof. So we're working through that. We'll meet that by the time we need to get it done.
No,
But just a-
Robert, you and your crew are just phenomenal. I mean, you know, it was pointed out to me today by Madam Secretary that apparently I have multi-problems with my computers, and every time I do, you guys are right on it. I appreciate it. I appreciate your sidekick back there for everything he does on the video aspects here and everything else. So you just have Lisa dealt with me in regards to stuff this time around. So I do appreciate it,
Absolutely.
everything. And I know the staff does too. You guys are just fantastic. So
Yeah, I was
Absolutely.
able to visit a couple of classrooms and to see the students working on the laptops and seeing how they were engaged in their learning with the technology. I was pretty impressed. So thank you to your team for making that happen and getting us moving in towards the future. And these were young kids working on the computer, like first grade, you know, so hats off.
Yeah, they're gonna be very advanced.
Didn't you also say you had some adaptive programs for the SPED program with the reading and that as well that we purchased? I didn't hear you mention that in this report, but maybe you did and I missed it. But
I will have to circle back with you on that one.
that's something where they actually can read, you know, the computer can read the book. And
I think it's part of the iPad stuff that you do with the.
That's the iPads. Yes. And so it's the app you guys are using. It's the Prolo Quota Go, and I would believe that's what that is specifically, that app. And I think we're exploring options with regard to our format going forward, just with devices. On our side, it's more device, but we're looking for some solution with regard to getting, maybe breaking away from the iPads, just depending on how sustainable they are for support. But that's something I'd have to work through with SPED, but yeah, absolutely.
amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank
One
you.
thing that's really important to note, right, is that we are, believe it or not, constantly under attack from hackers, right? And so part of Robert's job is to balance the needs of the staff and the students to get into their accounts easily and be able to easily navigate through things, with the realization that one person across the district can open an email that has an attachment that's malicious, and it can create millions of dollars in damage, right, across the district, and compromise data that's some of the most secure data that we're supposed to keep. And so it is, it's through their efforts, you know, Robert and Eric and the team, that we're able to keep safe, right? And we have neighboring districts that have been held up by ransomware, right? So it's a really important thing, and the work that we do behind the scenes in the technology department is key to our success across the district.
Absolutely. Thank you, Robert.
Thanks so
Thank
much,
you all.
Robert.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, moving to item 10.7, boundary update.
Patty, you don't have to stay for the whole thing for your class? Okay. So Chris, and you've been seeing part of this boundary process as we go through, and Chris and Kirsten have brought you a PowerPoint. And what we intended to do today is not necessarily go through the entire PowerPoint. They're gonna move their way through, but what we wanted to show you was, this is what the families will see when we go out and we're presenting to them. And so there are some pieces that we're gonna go through quickly, because you've had a chance to look at it, but we're also going to go through and spend some time on some of the changes, because those may come back to you.
Okay, so thank you. Especially what we'd like to do tonight is get some feedback. I know you've already seen it, but when we go out to visit school sites and those community meetings, we want to make sure that we are presenting something that will be that when we present it, it won't feel like it's alarming or concerning. We really want to make sure we're sharing information that people will feel supported. So that is something that we have here. When our process here is to just talk about developing those attendance boundaries and preparing for our new school, and that it'll only affect students that are TK through third. So we want to make sure that I think will lower that affective filter right there. So the purpose of the meeting when we go out will be to discuss those considerations, review the timeline, and share those draft boundaries. So there's a beautiful rendering of our school. It's gorgeous, lots of trees. I'm just doing this speed.
Yeah,
Okay.
doing great.
And then history of all of our schools. We used to be opening schools like every year there for a while, and now I'm sorry, I forgot to be moving forward. And then now slower version of opening schools. We had quite a gap there for about 12 years here since MCB. So really important piece of it is those equitable programs. And so we want to make sure that, oops, sorry, Robin.
Okay, so Robin and Kirsten, you got to decide who's going to move it.
I know.
Okay, who's going to move it forward?
Robin, you're not invited on the
Okay.
on the ambassador meetings. So important that we have equitable programs and that those core instructional programs are intact. Our common district initiatives, everything will be in place at our new school. So that is really important. Yes.
Is this supposed to be July 2024? Where the new school?
What?
Next one.
Yeah, that's still the plan.
I don't know.
Okay,
who's
because it
doing
says
what.
July 2025.
Yes, you're right.
Yes.
Slide 6.
Yes,
Okay.
thank
Correct
you. Yes. Okay, thank you. Perfect. That's exactly what we need. So the growth considerations,
Can you please hand her the computer?
She has the remote.
I know, but we're fighting it.
She needs to see the screen. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So our growth considerations, Rob was saying earlier, this year has been an anomaly that we are growing so quickly. So it's hard to really take a good guess, but we believe that we're having 2% growth right now when our average is really 1 to 2% each year. But that's what we're currently planning for as we move forward. So our criteria for our attendance boundaries, and we'll share this, what our board policy is, especially as concerns and questions come up, is that we are trying to minimize disruptions to the existing boundaries, creating community schools, providing those safe walking routes, allowing capacity for future enrollments and growth, and balance the enrollment between existing schools, including the number of students enrolled and those demographics. Okay.
The next slide is about projected enrollment. I think you've seen this and know why we're building another school. And you can see the decrease, how it impacts other school sites. So if we can go to the next slide. A little bit about the history. Purchased in 2008. You know this occurred during the recession, and in 2016 it came back from our demographers the need to be able to build a school on the northwest side of Brentwood. And you guys know this very well. There was no land available. The district worked with the city, and other options did not materialize. Wasn't that a nice way of saying that?
That was
Tongue in
very
cheek.
nice.
I thought so too. This is our current boundaries map. And then timeline and process. So that process is happening right now from July to December. There are committee meetings and presentations to the board about this process. From January to February, Kirsten and I will be going out and doing a roadshow to 4 of our school sites, and I'll give that list later. And we'll be making parents and families and community members aware by employee meetings, parent meetings, as well as site parent forums, newspaper newsletters, mailing, social media, and then of course our website, and being able to get feedback from the community about this process. And then the proposed boundary adoption timeline from January to February is when we'll be having those community meetings, and then the public hearing will occur in March 2023. And then April 2023 is the adoption of the new district boundaries, and then July 2024 is the boundary change implementation. Here are the school sites that will be affected by the boundary change, and where Kirsten and I will be going out to do those presentations. Initial drafted elementary school boundaries effective July 2024. We'll adopt those elementary school boundaries and then balance enrollment between sites, reduce projected enrollment at Pioneer and Loma Vista and Brentwood elementary schools, expand enrollment at Rondon and Marsh Creek elementary schools, and then establish boundary and enrollment for the new school at Lone Tree and Smith Lane. The rest of it is slides as they pertain to the different schools and the changes that we are making. And so we'll go over that with parents. That will always be difficult because the operation of just understanding a map. I'm going to cut you out, Robin.
We're just gonna, this is your fast version of mini maps.
So I'm guessing there's going to be like different talking points for each school you're going to go to.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we'll also have these blown up so that you can actually see it. Great question.
And one of the things that's really important too is, even though at each school you'll focus mostly on their population, what we do when we do the invitations is we invite anybody to come to any meetings, because sometimes they can't make the one at their school. So that's why we go over all of them.
That's smart. Okay, take us to 24. So this is the projected enrollment by proposed attendance boundary. And so you see the impact there.
Next one.
Yeah, go ahead, next one. Robin, do you want to speak to this one at all?
Do we give you your computer?
We'll give you.
Yeah, no, I'm good. So this looks at the residents of students within the areas that are affected. And why I say it that way is if we look at Loma Vista, there's 131 students that are technically in our proposal moving from Loma Vista to Ron Nunn. But really, that's 131 current TK through third students that actually reside in the Loma Vista area. What we can't parse that out as some of those students actually attend other schools, so they've overflowed at some point. So really, of those 131, we were talking earlier today, it's maybe 70 to 80% of those students actually attend Loma Vista. Probably 30% of them actually attend other schools based on the average across the district. And so this sort of looks at, gets a picture of, initially based on the proposal, how many kids would be affected. The other one is the 309 at Marsh Creek are the kids that would actually be living right around the Lone Tree site. And so they're closer to that site anyway. That's why that number's bigger. They would be naturally to Lone Tree anyway, or the Lone Tree site.
Okay. And then other factors that we have to consider during this time period is the two developments, the Sela development and the Herdorn Road development, as well as that Pioneer may be affected by the housing at Amber Lane Apartments, which we've been monitoring for some time now, and then Laurel Ridge north of Lowe's, and then PA1 is not in development yet, and so we have to continue to monitor that process. Post-adoption process will be that January parent-student notification, January through March 1st, we'll have an intra-district transfer process. March 1st through July 15th, the inter-district transfer process, and then January through July, school program development, equitable programs, and balanced staffing will be happening as we onboard that staff and new principal and all those other things. Just to go back, the intra and the inter-district process is the same process that we use, and that's our current board policy.
Is that January a month?
I was just going to say that we probably want to put the year on there because it could be confusing. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm a thinker.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm wondering on this slide, or will we talk to? So if I'm putting my parent hat on,
Yep.
if I'm a parent that might have a student impacted, where my child will be then going to a different school if they've kind of got their friendship groups or whatever, or just feeling comfortable in that school that they're in and will have to transfer to a different one. Do we talk about what kind of support we're going to be giving our students and families during that transition?
It's a great idea. And you're talking about for those that are going to the new school? Yeah, absolutely. We talk
We'll
about.
have to change schools at all.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And one of the things that gets talked about usually in that regard is when you're going, the one thing about opening a new school is that everybody's new. So the environment itself is rather supportive because there's so much team building that goes on in that. But I think that's a great piece to actually put in the presentation, right? And to add in there. It's much more than what you would see at a traditional school because you're establishing all of the routines and traditions all together, right, as a group. And it's typically a smaller school that when you start, right, this could be 400, 500 students in the beginning. So but that would be a good thing to put. I think in looking at the process, one of the things that, we want to just talk through, right, is what Kirsten and Chris will collect as input from the families. And typically what you'll see is we will have challenges because people love the schools that they're in. And so they will come back and they will want to stay in their schools. And that's typically what you'll hear from people is don't move me, right? That's what they want to hear. The challenge is going to be is that you have to have enough students in a new school to make it viable going forward. There are considerations. Typically, what happens, right, is that people come in and they present why they think it's important not to make a change. The board will consider all those things and make recommendations, but the board has a range of options within that in terms of allowing intra-district transfers if there's space available, meaning that if there was space and you could make it work that a child could stay at their campus. Usually the board adopts, their criteria that gives preference to siblings, right? If there's a sibling there that's staying in 5th grade, right, it might make sense to keep somebody there. So those kinds of things come about, but it is typically an emotional meeting because of the people's strong connection with their schools.
And tradition has showed me too that you won't get as many people at the first meetings and all that, but when you get ready to adopt it, that's when suddenly now it is affecting me. I'm realizing that my child is the one, and you can't help but sympathize that they have a good point, but we still have to balance our schools and things.
Yeah. And that might be a meeting that we hold at Guerin Elementary, for example, just to make sure that we have enough room for everybody who wants to participate to be able to participate.
Understood. Any other questions? All right. Moving on to item 10.8.
Thank you, Robin, for sharing your computer.
Yeah, thank you. 10.8 is item. This is approval of SB 1479.
Yeah, this is there's a new requirement that the school district adopt either the state's COVID testing requirement or create their own. The policy is listed there for you. It's what we're currently doing in terms of having tests available and so forth. And so what we're recommending to you is that we adopt the state's framework, and then that's required to be posted on our website by January 1st.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve 10.8, which is Senate Bill 1479.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve item 10.8 SB 1479. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to 10.9, election of officers of the Board of Trustees.
So we are at that time as we're changing over. I probably should have given you your certificate at this point. I didn't think about that. Your big thing. So, but thank you for your service as president. But while there's no limit on the time that a president can serve, typically this is the time each year where the board selects a new one.
I'd like to nominate Stephanie for the president for the 23 calendar year.
I will second.
Thank you.
Am I allowed to do that? Sure. Okay. It's been moved and I seconded that we elect Stephanie Williams Rogers as board president for the next year. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Yeah.
And then we need a clerk as well.
I'd like to nominate Twee to serve as clerk.
If there are no objections from Twee, I will second that.
Or
It's been moved and seconded that Twee will be our clerk for the next year.
Who seconded?
I did, Steve did.
Thank you.
All in favor?
I'm gonna stop a second. I know that this is just for other, maybe other reasons. Scott, had you wanted, and you had mentioned.
Just for my granddaughter's purpose, because my granddaughter would be in 8th grade, so
Oh,
I
I
just thought it
see.
would be kind of,
Okay.
but,
So that would be next year.
That would
So
be
if you were,
so it would be the 24, 25. No, it'd be, yeah, not next year.
Well, we have not always done the clerk becoming the president as we have here, and so.
It's up to you guys. I mean, that was my only reason. So,
I don't think Twee being clerk would preclude you from being president the following year. If
yeah, but
that
she'd
were-
be out. That's the only reason I'm saying. So that's fine.
I kind of wanted to be president in the next year because it's the election year.
So which, so the
2024.
year you would be if,
Yeah, because it should be more president.
sure. All right. All in favor of Twee being clerk? Aye.
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 Motion carries. All right. Next up, that's it, right? There's just clerk and president.
That's it.
Good.
Yeah, and now there's representatives is the next one.
I believe Emil currently serves on the East County.
Yeah, so do you want to hear the ones we have right
Yes,
now?
please.
So
Oh, no, that's Scott, right?
That's me.
yeah, Scott's on transportation. Negotiations is Scott and Steve. Interagency is Twee and Stephanie. Education Foundation is Stephanie. We can at least start there, but it might be winding down. Construction Committee is Emil and Steve, and then Diversity Committee is Twee and Stephanie.
I would like to be on the construction committee again. I think that Steve and I have a lot of experience in this area, so.
I would like to continue as well, if everybody's okay with that.
Agency, I know there may be more. I've done that before. I was on the first one, so.
I'd like to stay on my two, which would be transportation and also the
Negotiations.
employee negotiations.
I think you do a great job on that negotiation.
Okay.
Yeah, confidence of-
So is there anybody that would like to come? This is up for you guys to decide, but you could decide if anybody wants to come off when they're on or get on one that they're not on.
I
right
would
now.
like to stay on negotiations and construction if there are no objections.
So does anybody want to move?
Well, personally, I would like to come off. I mean, I understand what may happen in the future with the Brentwood Education Foundation, but I'd like to come off. I'd like to come off.
What does that entail, if anybody?
Not much moving forward, it sounds like.
Yeah, and really, it's probably not necessary to have a board representative going forward if the board's okay with me just
Okay.
updating things going
Yeah.
on at
I
the state
think
that we're
that's
at.
fine.
It's up to you guys.
I'd like to stay on the interagency committee. I think the last meeting, we've been made some good traction. And I feel pretty committed to the work that's happening with the interagency. So I'd like to stay on. So I guess that's up for discussion because there's 2 spots, but there's 3 individuals that are interested. Twee is interested. I won't speak for you, Twee, but she's acknowledged that she's interested in staying on the interagency committee. And Emil has also just mentioned he's interested. So I don't know what happens at this point.
Arm wrestle.
Emo can be on it.
It's totally up to you guys.
Emo, you can be on interagency.
Okay, the only change that we're having, just for the minutes, we're taking Stephanie off the foundation and we're taking Twee off the interagency and adding people.
Yes, I just have a question. It feels like we haven't had a diversity committee meeting in quite a while. Maybe I might have missed something, but just curious if someone can talk to that, if that's going to continue and who's on point for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely, we are. That was on hold while we brought on did the RFP process, right?
Okay.
And so our committee met during that process. We then hired the consultant, and we'll begin that work in January. And so we're setting up a series of meetings with them.
Okay.
So our last meetings were really the 3 meetings that we went through for the RFP process.
Okay.
action item. So we would just need you guys to motion and second, and I have the updated assignments reflected in the minutes.
I'll make the motion that we accept the appointment of the board representative as read by, go ahead and read, please.
Okay, Transportation Consortium, Scott Dudek, Display Negotiations, Dudek, Gursky, Interagency, Geddes, Williams Rogers. Construction Committee, Geddes, Gursky, Diversity Committee, Dow Jensen, William Rogers.
Sounds about right.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Next up, item 10.12, filing of statement of facts for roster of public agencies.
So the next couple are just standard items that you have to do at this time of the year to move forward. And then I'm sure Nicole will chase you down for some signatures afterwards.
Yeah, so the next two are going to be signatures for you guys. It's part of the annual reorganization that goes to the county recorder office and the elections office.
I'll make a motion to approve item number 10.12, the filing of statement of facts for roster of public agencies.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve item 10.12,
That's what.
filing of statement of facts for roster of public agencies. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Next up, item 10.13, authorized signature resolution.
Move that we approve the authorized signature resolution item 10.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve item 10.13, the authorized signature resolution. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Next up, item 10.14, consideration of nominations for CSBA Delegate Assembly.
Yeah, so this is that time where you, if a board member is interested, we currently have Trustee Dow Jensen that's on. And your term it's this year and next year, is that right?
21, 22, over in March 23.
Oh, okay. So if you
Yeah.
want, for some reason I thought you had one more year, but you're right, because it would
Yeah.
be the ending 23. So if Tui wants to continue or if somebody else is interested, that opportunity is here and they would just need a nomination.
I move that we nominate Tui to continue her service on the CSBA Delegate Assembly if she would like to do so.
Yes.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we nominate Tui Dow Jensen to be in nomination for the CSBA Delegate Assembly. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right. Any other board member comment or future agenda items?
What's the special board meeting? What's that?
So that special board meeting is, we had our meeting with the principals. The next one is a meeting with cabinet to do sort of a mid-year goal review and preparation for the goal setting process going forward. And it's an early start too. It's a 4:30 start.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. The next special board meeting will be held on January 11th, 2023 at 4:30 p.m. And our next regular board meeting will be held on January 18th, 2023 at 6 p.m. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Don't go anywhere.
Robert, is this